I built 5 garden beds for the price of a box of screws, and I'm going to show you guys how I did it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the True North Life Homestead. So a lot of you guys are probably looking to get into homesteading and looking at the costs of things right now and going, there is no stinking way you can do that. And I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can. You just have to be a little bit creative and get involved with your community to make sure that this can happen. So I built 5 garden beds for $20, which is the price of this box of screws, and I still have some left, so I could build a few more. But these beds behind me, the metal ones here, they are all free garden beds basically. All the materials that came into them, minus the screws, the lumber that went into it, the outside panels, it's all upcycled material that was going to be thrown out. So you guys can absolutely garden for very little cost. So I'll show you guys what I've done with these to make them as cost effective as possible. So this is one of the garden beds that I'm talking about today. This guy is 16 feet long. I could probably sleep in here if I really wanted to. It's 16 by 4 feet. And the metal or the wood in the middle that you see here was all things that I found in the scrap pile at our local hardware store. A lot of these are bottoms to bits of skid that they were going to be thrown out. They have that little scrap box at the very back of our lumber section at our hardware store. So I was able to go through, rummage through that, and find a couple of pieces of wood just to add a little bit more support so that this guy isn't bowing out over the years. But this is a metal garden bed, a sturdy guy. It's going to last me a very long time. The wood in here that I got for free is probably going to run out long before the metal on the outside, so I'll have to come in and kind of dig out and re-secure it over the years. But for, what was it? The cost of, so I built 5 garden beds with that 1 box of screws that I have screws left in. And so I'm probably looking at a cost of about, what, $4 a box, $3 a box, somewhere in there. Probably less than that. I'd have to count out how many screws that I've got left. But they built 16-foot garden beds. It's huge. Most garden beds that you see are roughly around the 6 to 8 foot. I went with 4 foot wide because you can see my arm length here. Comfortably, I can reach across half of the garden bed on one side and half of the garden bed on the other side, so that's the perfect size for me to be able to do my gardening in these things, in these beds. And they are huge. So I'm going to be able to grow things like corn and a unreasonable amount of cucumbers and things like these. And it cost me up to $4 maximum for these beds. This is another one that I just built. It's a little bit dirty still because these beds have actually been sitting here in the garden waiting to be built for a little while because couldn't do it while I was, you know, pregnant last year, but they're getting done this year. And you can see these posts here. These guys are actually from my cousin. So they are old fence posts. They're just going to add a little bit of support for the garden beds, and they fit perfectly. So these are the bottoms of the skids that they use at the hardware store. They have a little bit of a dent in the middle, I guess to cut down on costs or to make things easier to move with the machinery that they have, and they fit perfectly the tops of these posts, so they slide right in, and we just had to add a little bit of extra strength in the middle to make sure that they stay like that. But this guy, again, so this is from a cousin that was taking down her deck. She had the spare wood. I was like, absolutely, I will take it. I can use that. I've used them on a few different projects just to add a little bit of support, cut them down, and they've been absolutely great. And again, so free from a family member, free from the hardware store, free from a friend. Really, like, it's just about asking people, saying like, hey, these are the projects that I want to complete this year. Do you guys have anything that would, you know, stand up to weather? Do you guys have anything that, like any scrap pieces of lumber around? It doesn't even have to be pressure treat. This is not pressure treat. These are pressure treat. We'll see how they progress and if we have any bowing. I've got some beds as a test that have supports in them, some of them that don't. And we'll see the comparison as time goes on, so you guys will definitely have to stay tuned for that. You can see over here beside it, I've got a couple that I had from the years previous. So this one has our garlic in it this year. This one here we planted last time you guys were with us, and it's got our beets and our cabbages in it. And this one here is about a year old, And look, so you can see the difference in them. So some of them look a little bit nicer than others, obviously, because they're upcycled material. But they're used garage doors. What I did here was, this is a 8-foot bed. The one is a little bit bigger behind it, so it's about a 9-foot bed. They're a little bit off center, but from a distance you can't really tell. These guys here were put together. I have a friend that helped me out getting these, and then they actually also provided us with the flashing. So these beds here aren't included in my ginormous beds that I did for a couple of bucks, because they provided everything for us. So really I think I've got about 10 beds made out of these, because I've got 2 here, 2 here, and then behind us I did a couple more with the material that they provided. These ones still need to be readied for planting, so they can be ready for next year. We're gonna get the irrigation, and we'll fill those up with you guys so that we have a video on how to stock a new garden bed. So I'm super excited for that. You'll have to stay tuned for that. Hit that like and subscribe button so that you guys don't miss out on things like this. So I've got these 2 beds that came from that, these 2 beds, and those 2 beds, whoop, back there. These guys all were provided to us free of charge, because I was talking to somebody and I said, you know what, I really need some garden beds. I would like to have a ton of them. These ones here, they cost me, before everything went super duper crazy, the big beds here cost me about 150 bucks. The little beds there cost me about 100 bucks, with soil included. Obviously now you'd probably be looking at like $200 or something like that for the big ones, and about $150 probably for the small ones, because they don't really use that much difference of wood. I used pretty cheap wood. You can see this one here in front of us is bowing out, and the metal one that was free beside it is not. So it's totally worth having an ask around on what kind of materials people are looking to give away for free. Another thing that I love about the metal garden beds is that they don't have any perforations in the side of them. So you can see here, these plants are growing out of the side of the garlic bed, so they're competing for root space in the bed even though they're not inside of it. I've got a raspberry plant growing there, so I'm not too upset about it. They seem to be spreading like wildfire. The birds around here love to share our berries with us, and they love to poop them out, I guess, in our garden beds. So I'm not really upset. I'll probably relocate that plant. But not having to deal with having plants and weeds grow out of the side of your bed is huge, because if we look over here, there is nothing that can grow on the side of that garden bed. That beautiful garlic will be all by itself. And look, out of these free garden beds, garlic scapes. Those are starting to come into season, so that's great. Beautiful. Gonna have some of that. We pickled some of them last year, and we canned them, and you can fry them up and just eat them like you would asparagus, and super garlicky. But cannot wait. Love growing garlic. I love plants that just keep on giving. So they get the scapes from them, and you get the bulbs. It's gonna be absolutely awesome. If you guys caught our garden update video that we just released, these are the beans that we planted. They are looking absolutely gorgeous. I also have a couple of videos that are gonna be coming out on how we did our irrigation, because everything is irrigated, because I'm not doing that by hand anymore. It was gonna take too long with all this gardening. So we're trying to automate as well as be frugal here, because when you're not investing in these beds and you can save a little bit of money somewhere, you can upscale to the more fancy things, and it can save you time and eventually money in the future. This is our lettuce patch this year. I'm super excited about it. So I'm trying an experiment where I've got stuff that I can cut and come again on one side, and then heads of lettuce on the other side. I didn't want to dedicate a whole bed to heads of lettuce, because you're gonna get those heads and it's gonna be, that's it. So I want to be able to snack on some things while I'm waiting for those to come in, and our lettuce looks absolutely gorgeous. But it's a good example of, we're not using this whole bed. We're only using a little bit of that root underneath. So we really want to focus on top dressing and making sure that that topsoil is great. And as things decompose underneath, that soil level will drop down, which means you can come back in with better material and fill it back up. Planted some herbs, and that's our cilantro that's starting to come in there. And if we have a look, our dill is also starting to grow up here. And parsley, very excited about that. And we've got a little bit of our basil as well that's starting to come in. Got the ones we had kind of as our markers at the top. So we've got that celery, thyme, basil, parsley, dill, chives, and cilantro. And then all of their little direct sowed buddies are starting to come up here as well. In comparison to our beds that we have that we got for free, this bed here is a 10-foot by 2-foot bed, and we used 2 by 6s to be able to build this, which is a little bit fancier the wood that I would usually go for, but it was the only one that I could find in 10-foot lengths, so it would do for the job. This guy, just for the panels on the outside, so there's 6 of them, like just these 6 panels, because I had the side boards were left over from building our other beds. Just those ones cost us almost $140, just as a comparison. And then we've got the supports on the inside, the 2x4s that are holding up the corners and all the screws and everything that went into this one. It went together a lot faster than the metal beds, I will say that, but for like $200 plus, it's not worth it to me. I'd rather spend the time and the energy to put together the free garden beds, or the beds that only cost us about $4 in order to change that up. A lot of people too might be worried about the aesthetic of the garden that you can get when you have a lot of free materials in it. So you end up, a lot of times you'll end up with tires everywhere and all that kind of stuff, and it can tend to look a little bit more junky. But these guys, they look so nice. I put all the nice white on the outside, and I also got some external paint that is totally optional. I didn't have to do it. But by the time these guys are all done and ready, they're filled and planted, and I have 15 minutes on my hands. I'm going to come through again and I will paint them so that they are all a solid white color, and it'll look super beautiful with the contrasting of that rich, dark soil inside of them. So if we're taking a look at the garden as a whole, it looks great. So you wouldn't really know that these items, you know, weren't paid for. You wouldn't really know that there was any issues with them beforehand. I think it's really, really pretty, and it's just going to be white boxes and wood by the time we're done with it. All of this stuff here that needs to be painted will be covered, and I could even put white siding on the edge of those wooden beds to make everything look the same, and then we wouldn't have that issue with the plants growing in the middle of them, so I will probably end up doing that. Back here too, we're going to be putting a couple of spare scraps of lumber behind those 4 beds so that we have a row of asparagus coming up in the next little while, which would be absolutely great. So we have plans. This is not something that was just kind of thrown together slapstick. It is absolutely something that I love working on. There's my compost flag that has been in a couple of videos. Should really take that down. And then these 2 beds here are going to go back with the other 2 beds back here. So we've got 1, 2, 3 16-foot beds. This 16-foot bed is going to go behind that one, and then the smaller 12-foot bed is going to go along the same length as our garlic there. And I do have a plan for these things that they should have plants in them now, but you know, life happens and things get in the way, so they are all built. We just need to fill them up with some soil, and we are ready to go for the season. Not just this year, not just next year, but probably for the next 20-25 years. These guys will last a long, long, long time. I'm very excited about that. This is also just an example of what you guys could use in your garden. I like to be a little bit more selective on the items that I bring into the homestead. It may not look like it from the outside, but I don't want it to look junky. I want it to look like it's been properly reused and everything is going to the best source it can. So what I used is old garage doors and old flashing on the sides here, just to make it look a little bit nicer. You don't have to do that. There are so many different options out there. There's so many frugal ways to build a garden bed. Really all you're looking for is something that can hold soil. It doesn't have to be wood, it doesn't have to be metal, it doesn't have to look like stunning like you see on Pinterest and Instagram. It just has to hold soil, because the idea that you're getting out of this is that it'll grow you food. The thing that's containing it doesn't matter as much as what is inside of the bed. So as long as you have a containment, it doesn't have to cost you $1,000 to do it. It doesn't have to cost you $100 to do it. It doesn't even have to cost you $10 to do it. So if you guys are looking to get started in gardening, You could probably use, if you're in a smaller space, old takeout containers or old buckets. Have a look at friends that are trying to clear out their spaces in their homes, trying to downsize, or they're trying to spring clean, because all this planting happens in spring, so it's the perfect time to go around and be like, hey, you know what? I've been looking for this or that. Are you looking to get rid of anything? And you can just ask around in your community. A lot of this stuff happens because of people in our community. Process of building that are going to cost us little to no money because of the help we were able, or because of the creativity that we were able to have in sourcing materials. I hope you guys find this video super inspiring and you guys are ready to go out and just see what you guys can use. I would recommend using things that are a little bit more higher quality, being a little bit pickier, because you're not looking to hoard or collect trash. You're looking to upcycle and to build and to grow. So make sure that you're still using good quality products that you can find, but it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. So stay creative, guys. Look out everywhere you can to find what you can use on your homestead and get to growing. I will see you guys next time. We are building some things and we are going to fill some things, so make sure you hit that subscribe and that like button. The like button and everything really helps the channel out, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. So I will see you guys next time.